Hi there, my name is Jay Vega. I work for Microsoft and I'm a volunteer for Junior Achievement here in Reno. I'd like to welcome Travis. Hi, Travis. Could you
Hi,
introduce
how are you?
yourself? I'm doing well. How are you?
Fantastic. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you. I'd like to introduce, could you introduce yourself and the company that you work for, please?
Absolutely. My name is Travis Warren, and I'm an officer with the Reno Police Department here in Reno, Nevada.
Sounds great. Can you tell me a little bit about your job and why you chose it?
Absolutely. It's pretty easy in terms of explaining why I got into law enforcement. So I've been here 16 years. I started really young. I started when I was 22 years old. I knew what I wanted to do pretty early in life. And so it was just a matter of finding the right department that I wanted to work for, and then going through the testing process. When before I was a police officer, I was working as a personal trainer, and what I saw was I was able to really help positively impact people's lives through improving their health and just quality of life in that regard. And so I started really considering the fact that working in public service, policing in general, policing specifically, that I would have a larger platform to do good in my community, to have a positive impact on my community and people around me. So I saw that as my main, and still to this day, my main motivation for getting into law enforcement is that I really wanted to help people improve their lives and improve, maybe, especially what we do in law enforcement, help them through difficult times in their lives.
Cool, cool. What does a typical day in the life look like for you?
For me, so what I am right now assigned is called the Public Information Officer. So I speak on behalf of the police department. So for incidents, well, not incidents, but for circumstances like this, where you just want to know my day to day, and I get an opportunity to speak to students at schools, I work with the media on a regular basis to share stories about cases that we've had, information that we need communities assistance with. Um, and write press releases. I do, and believe it or not, even though I'm a little bit older, I do handle our social media as well. So a lot of things I've had to learn over the span of 2.5 years of doing this as my main focus. One of the things that I do enjoy the most about my position right now is a large component of what I do is community engagement. And
Mhm.
obviously, with COVID-19, it's kind of put the brakes on a bit of our community outreach. But prior to that's one of the strengths with the Reno Police Department is that we're very community oriented and we love being involved in events, whether it's events that we're hosting or events that the community is hosting. So for me, leading up to when everything closed, I was just so fortunate to be involved in so many different community oriented events, to speak on behalf of the police department, to represent the police department, and really from the perspective of helping people learn more about the police department and what we do, and from especially this angle,
Mhm.
those that are interested in a career in law enforcement, helping them to have a face-to-face encounter with an officer to answer questions they may have about what it's like to be a police officer. So that's been quite rewarding for me.
Exactly, exactly. You mentioned that you loved helping people, and so obviously this is a great role to be playing. What else do you love about the work that you do?
Well, really, I think helping. I think it also requires you to be a really good critical thinker.
Hmm.
You're really put in situations that you may not have experienced before. And like I said, I was 22 when I first started. So, I mean, I'm not sure. Obviously, the students are not that age, but as you can imagine, I was 22. I didn't have children. I wasn't married. And so for me, having to work with families that were struggling, maybe with their children or with other things pertaining to things that I didn't have life experience with, it required me to mature. It required me to learn about the things that I didn't know very well. And so this job has always required me to try and be better every single day,
Yeah,
whether that's how I interact with people or that's how much I know. So it requires you to constantly learn and seek out knowledge so that you become a better, more effective police officer. So that's
excellent,
one of the main components I really do enjoy about this job.
excellent, excellent. So let's go back a step. When you were back in middle school or high school,
Mhm.
what did you want to be, and how does that connect to where you are today?
Well, I know it sounds really cliche, but I knew that I always wanted to be a police officer. I didn't know if I'd ever be a police officer, but I
Mm.
always had it in my mind that that would be a job that I would really like to do. So
Yeah.
for me, in regards to how I, the friends that I chose to hang out with, the influences I chose to have in my life, in terms of my social circle, all those things I always had in the front of my mind because, when you're young, peer pressure is a heck of a thing. And you
Mhm.
never know when your friends might put you in a situation that you don't want to be in. And so I always knew that I wanted to be a police officer. Whether or not I did, I wasn't sure. But it helped me stay on track, stay focused, do well in school, stay out of trouble,
Mhm.
and ultimately, when that opportunity arose, where being a police officer was definitely something that could happen, I was ready for it, or at least I thought I was ready for it at 22.
Yeah, it's still quite a young age, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
What other jobs did you have before you were a policeman?
Well, so I was a dishwasher at a restaurant. I was gonna say pub, but I was a dishwasher. I was a waiter. I sold shoes at a shoe store. I
Yeah.
was a salesperson at a major department store. I was a lifeguard for a while, and I was like I said, I was a personal trainer. So a lot of my a lot of my job choices growing up were always service oriented.
Hmm.
Helping somebody in some way, shape, or form. And I think what it really helped me with is it taught me how to communicate with people, and that is such a huge component of this job. Something that we are looking at, and we were critical about when we look at our trainees, when we look at new hires, things
Hmm.
like that. Even the officers that have been around for a while, the effective communicators do very, very well in this job because that's exactly what we're here to do. We talk with people, we help them through problems, we have to communicate certain things with the community members that we encounter. And if you don't know how to articulate yourself or communicate, you can find yourself in confusing circumstances that are unnecessary. So it taught me how to be an effective communicator. So
Hmm.
that for me, when I look back on all the jobs that I had growing up until the point I became a police officer, I realized that the main core component or benefit of those was my ability to learn how to talk to people I didn't know anything about, people I had didn't know if I had any common interests with, people from different backgrounds. But I
Hmm.
learned to be curious, and I learned to ask questions, and I learned how to talk to people, and that was a
That's
big benefit.
That's so interesting. Myself as well. I've always worked in IT as well, from a very young age. But I was also a part-time waiter in the UK when I went from England, and
Yeah,
you get to meet so many different people that no matter what level they are, you learn how to communicate and you adapt to that, and that does help a lot. I agree with you.
yeah.
What was your first ever job?
First ever job.
Yeah,
My first ever job was. Well, let me think. Which was my first ever job? So my first ever job was. Like I mentioned to you before we started recording, I grew up in England,
yeah,
and in England there's a place you can go to, a shooting range, and they're called the butts, right? And so they're these large targets that you push up and down for people to target shoot, and there's a big berm in the very back, so you sit behind a berm like in a dugout for baseball, and you would have a little radio, and they would tell you when the shot had been sent, and then you would pull this. I mean, it's massive, like 10-foot target on a metal frame down, and you would have this orange marker, and you would put the orange marker in, and you would push it back up. And I remember going every Saturday. You'd show up at a spot, and they would take like the first 10 kids or whatever, and you'd get $30 a day or 30 pounds a day to sit there all day and just push them up and down. It's fantastic. I mean, for a young kid.
yeah,
And then, of course, you thought you were rich because you had $30 in your pocket. So,
yeah.
that was my first, I guess, formal job. I always had chores and stuff, but that was kind of my first formal job.
Did you learn anything positive or negative from that experience?
Nah, not really. I don't think it was for me, it was more or less just getting in the rhythm of having a job and
Hmm.
having responsibility, especially at a young age, when I was 14, 15.
Yeah.
Um, the requirements of meeting a task. So I think that was beneficial from that regard. But I really think for me, it was, my next real job was becoming a dishwasher.
Yeah.
And, for me, it was more or less just It was a structure of having a job, realizing that, you know, you have to show up on time. You have a task that they're paying you to complete and you need to do it. And then there is the personal aspect of taking pride in what you do. You
Hmm.
know, obviously you can just wash dishes or you can go above and beyond. And that comes with that certain level of personal pride of making sure that when they know that when you're there, the work is going to be exceptional. And I think I took that and I used that as my opportunity to build a work ethic that I
Hmm.
think still stays with me to this day. That no matter what I do, no matter what position I'm in, I always want to leave it better than I found it. And I
Yeah,
always want to make it easier for the next person who takes it. So
that's a great piece of advice. Yeah, I agree. So overall, is there anything you would like to share about your career that might have been unusual or a little bit different that could help the students who are thinking about their future careers? Anything strange?
I can tell you specifically for the Reno Police Department, because that's the only agency I've experience with, is that, you know, so I've been here just over 16 years. And then the 16 years has gone by so fast. And I have had the opportunity to do so many cool, different jobs while being a police officer. Just to kind of give you an example, I was a bike police officer downtown for a
Oh yeah,
period of time. I got to ride a mountain bike around, which was kind of fun. Gets you out of the car, and you know,
yeah.
I'm outdoorsy, so I like riding bikes and stuff. So that was fun. I was also a motorcycle officer for a while, so I got to ride a motorcycle as a job, which I thought
Yeah.
was really cool. And then I was a hostage negotiator for a number of years.
Wow.
So that was very rewarding. A lot of critical incidents and things like that that I got to work with or work through. And then I've been a police training officer. So I've
Hmm.
got to work with new officers coming in through the training program to help them and train them on the streets. And then, you know, obviously working in a position as a PIO, it's been a great position for me because I've had this opportunity to continue to even hone at this point my communication skills and being an effective communicator.
Yeah.
Because I think that that's a specific thing is you can communicate, but it's important to be an effective communicator.
I agree. Yeah.
Um, so that yeah. So I mean, I've got to do so many different things, and it's made 16 years go by so fast. And when I
Yeah.
sit, I mean, literally, when I sit right now and I think about it, and I think, my gosh, 16 years. The only thing that I really feel that I've noticed is my hairline changing or the lack thereof.
Yeah.
It's the hair, but now I don't have any of it.
I know
So
what you mean. Look how grey I'm getting, and that's only this year.
yeah. So it's gone by so fast, and I think that, you know, for me, I've had moments in this job that have been extremely rewarding, and I think that that's what really motivates me to continue. Uh, and obviously, even though I think going in early as a young man was had its challenges, just because I didn't have as much life experience, I also felt that it gave me a different perspective as well.
Mhm.
You know, one of a youthful perspective, and bringing that sort of new way of thinking, a younger, fresher perspective into a profession that, you know, has people of all tenures. You know, people who were, you know, when I was coming in, they were retiring. You know, and so
Mhm.
and then 10 years all in between. So that's the great thing about policing is that you have a huge there's such a differing age gap because new officers coming in, other officers that have been there for a while, you have continual fresh ideas coming in, and I
Mhm.
think that that's such a wonderful thing about policing too. And the Reno Police Department, it just is such a supportive environment in terms of listening to their officers on ways to do things better. You know, observations from perspectives that maybe they don't have. So I just think that that's fantastic, and I've seen it over and over again in this police department over the years, and that's why I just really love working for the police, working for the Reno Police Department.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, it sounds like there's a huge spectrum of opportunities out there. So, like you said, depending on what you're interested in, you can pursue that within the department. I think that's fantastic. It's the similar to my background in IT. You can go
Mm-hmm.
into different IT roles, but I again, like yourself, like helping people. So I've always been in a role where I've been specifically there to fix problems. So that's the
No,
sort of
yeah,
I
it's fun, and I think people I think that that is such a core trait of some people, and I think I speak specifically to myself. Like I've always found myself in positions that I'm directly helping, and I
Mhm.
think that's just who I am and what I gravitate to.
Mhm.
And I mean, just to talk briefly on some more opportunities for different careers within the Reno, within being a police officer at the Reno Police Department. I mean, you could be a detective, and that means if you're a detective, you could be a robbery and homicide detective, you could be
Mhm.
a child abuse detective, you could be a fraud detective, a burglary detective, a family crimes detective. We have a computer science detective.
Mhm.
Um, we have detectives that work with other federal agencies. We have we have a detective who just specializes in as a polygrapher to do polygraphs on people. Um, we have a canine unit that you can be a part of, the canine unit. So you have a dog. I mean, it's fantastic. Who would not want that? You can work different shifts: graveyard, swing shift, day shift. You could be on the SWAT team. You could be a hostage negotiator. You could ride a motorcycle. You could be a traffic investigator. Um, Heck, there's so many things that fit so many different personalities. And I
Yeah.
think that when people become aware of that, when people interested in the profession of law enforcement become aware of the opportunities that are there, other than just maybe just being a regular patrol officer that you would see driving around your streets, it
Mhm.
makes them realize like, whoa, there's a lot more that I could do as law enforcement, especially if you have a specific thing that you're interested in. If you're a
Yeah.
very analytical person and you like the idea of being a detective, I mean, so many opportunities to pursue
Definitely.
a career in that field.
Yeah, I mean, looking at those opportunities, I mean, what did the education look like? What did your education path look like? Was there certain certifications you had to pursue? Was there like certain trainings that you needed to be able to fulfill what you're doing now?
Yeah, so those things actually are, a lot of them happen internally. So if you join a specific unit, you don't always have to have prior certifications to get in, because not everybody always has the opportunity to do that.
Hmm.
If you're working a busy shift, you might not have the opportunity to go off and pursue a specific training because of maybe staffing or something like that. But if you enter into that unit, then they make sure that you get that training.
Yeah.
So um, excuse me, with like hostage negotiation, critical incident negotiation. You know, I didn't have training going into it, but when I was in it, we got a week-long FBI training.
Yeah.
From the FBI, which was really cool and fantastic, and certificate you can take with you, throughout the rest of your career and your life.
Yeah.
So yes, the continued learning that happens in law enforcement and the continued training opportunities, they're always there.
Yeah.
Obviously COVID, there's not as much training because there's not a lot of stuff being held at the moment.
Hmm.
I mean, but all things will pass.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Okay, well, I've got a good one for you. Got a couple of questions left. So what advice would you give your younger self if you had to choose your career path all over again?
Oh, great question. Um, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, in a lot of ways, I guess I grew up in this profession. Um, I thought, given my age, I thought that I was, in the life experience that I already had, that I was quite mature.
Yeah.
And I was also open-minded to learn. And um, I guess if I could say, I guess if I could think of something that maybe I should have done or I could have done prior to, that might have helped me,
Hmm.
um, I think maybe being in maybe another job before, something that um, as a personal trainer was great, but it wasn't your typical 9 to 5 or structured. It was sort of when you had clients or when you needed to be around.
Yeah.
Uh, Maybe just having more exposure to different opportunities to learn
Hmm.
about. Uh, I don't know. I'm kind of waffling right now because I can't really think of much. I mean, it is. I haven't really thought of that.
The funny thing is, you actually sound like you've always known your career path. So
Yeah,
that's amazing from a young age to know that. It's phenomenal, you know.
yeah. I think if I could choose something that maybe I felt like I should have, like I would have liked to have been a little bit more prepared for, is maybe some maturity. Like I
Hmm.
kind of mentioned, I was a young man and didn't have certain experiences dealing with certain problems that families or couples deal with. So I kind of had to kind of learn them as I experienced them.
Yeah.
So be trying to understand a little bit more about certain things that I wasn't familiar with from the onset, instead of learning as I needed to learn, like
Yeah.
on the job learning. But I mean, maybe that's kind of it. But I don't know. That's maybe the only thing I can really think of. Like you said, I knew what I wanted to do, and I felt mentally prepared for it. But I think that it's definitely a job that you have to, you got to want to do it. It can be very stressful at times, and it is something that you have to kind of consider. Maybe that's the thing, is I think that anybody coming into this profession has to consider everything that this job entails.
Yeah.
You know, the probability of not working the best shifts for the first portions of your life, you know, working graveyard on the weekends. I mean, if you're not used to stuff like that, there's certain physiological things that you could not be prepared for. Like I couldn't, it was really hard for me to sleep on graveyard. And you know, and I didn't realize that because I'd never worked graveyard before.
Yeah.
So, you know, certain things like that. Now, you don't have to experiment with yourself and stay up, you know, stay up all night and sleep all day. But I think it's considering all of these factors when you put in, you know, that you're likely not going to have the best shifts for the first few years of your career, and that you know, you have to work in a team environment. And if you don't have a lot of experience working in a team environment, that might be something that would be really good to experience.
Yeah.
You know, because there's lots of different personalities, and some you may get along with wonderfully, and some you may not. You need to know as an individual how you can still succeed. And so I think if you don't have experience working in a team environment, learning how that is, and then, you know, that would be something that would be a good thing to know.
No, I quite agree. It's exactly the same in my career. You work with so many different people. You have to get used to it, and, you know, learn how to deal with different kinds of people. As we close, what's any final piece of advice or inspiration you'd like to share with the students that are listening today?
I would just say that if you are interested in a career in law enforcement, whether it be with the Reno Police Department or any other agency, you know, we really are available. Even though you may not be able to arrive in person and talk to one of us, we love talking about what we do, and we love helping people with their decisions. Not make their decisions, but with their decisions, and helping to provide an honest depiction and as to what the job is and how you can prepare yourself. And so I think that you know, if you have any questions, you know, you can always go on renopd.com, or you can contact me directly, and you can drop me an email, and it's simple. And my email address is, my last name is Warren, Warren, and it's my first initial at the end, so T for Travis. So warrent@reno.gov. And if you have any questions about law enforcement, the career in law enforcement, career with Reno Police Department, just send me an email, and I'll get you as much information as I can, or call you on the phone and chat with you.
That's amazing, Travis. Thank you so much for your time. Lots of great information there to share with the students. And students, I hope you enjoyed it. So thank you very much for your time, and speak to you later on.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you. Bye.